Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm back for the last stage of Tour de la Provence. This is stage 3, day 4, and it's the summit finish, 13.5 kilometers, 6.5%. So we know the general classification is going to be played out at the end of today's race. Now, at the beginning of today's race, it's about 90 kilometers to go. A group of 5 are up the road. It's Luc Rowe from Ineos. Alexis Goujard is there from B&B Hotels. This boy is in the break all the time. The other 3 riders, Nicolas de Beaumarchais, he's been in breaks throughout this week. Romain Cobot is there from DSM. Jonathan Cunan from Nice Metropole is there. Now, Nice Metropole is one of the smaller teams here in the race, and they've been in the break every day. These guys have really been putting in big efforts to try to win stages here and put on a show for us fans viewing from the couch back home. Now, I want to point something out because it's Adam Blythe, one of the commentators, along with Matt, that are commentating on GCN Race Report here that I'm listening to when I'm sitting on the couch. Adam Blythe, I work with him with NBC, and he says some funny stuff. He's a fantastic announcer. He entertains. He brings in some good energy. He spots guys easily from far distance, and he knows all the riders A, B, and C, D, all the way down to Z, who he's looking at, who we're watching on the TV screen. But man, sometimes does he say some funny stuff tactically and other things. Today, with 85 kilometers to go, if you were watching, Adam Blythe starts talking about the riders in the break, how there's no need to carry any water bottles except for a half-full water bottle because you could always go back to the car. Now, this is a 170-kilometer stage with multiple mountains throughout the stage and a group of 5 that's in the break right away. I'm telling you, whatever you heard from Adam Blythe, you absolutely have to carry food in your pocket because he says he didn't even carry food in his pocket. He would just go back and forth to the team car because he's in the break, so the team car could come up every time. So he said, no need to carry food, no need to carry 2 bottles, and I'm here to tell you that is absolutely wrong. And I'll show you even on this stage, just a few kilometers later after Adam Blythe made those comments, they're going to go through the feed zone, about 75 kilometers to go. And it's none other than Ineos, Luc Rowe up there that grabs his feed bag. We're going to see him searching through his feed bag. First thing he pulls out is going to be a Coca-Cola, and he's going to put that in his back pocket. He's going to grab a bar. He's going to put that in his right back pocket. He's going to grab a gel. That's going to be in his back pocket along with the Coca-Cola. And when we see his bike, he's going to have 2 water bottles on there. So trust me when I tell you guys, if you're in the break, you young pros that are watching today's race or soon-to-be pros, soon-to-be bike racers of any kind, you never want to go into a bike race of this length of time, whether if you're in the front break or if you're in the field. Do you ever want to be without food and water and plenty of it on your persons and on your bike? So keep that in mind because that is absolutely a crazy thing to say. Now, I'm going to bookend today's Butterfly Effect with 2 examples from Adam Blythe, so make sure you stay for the end because you know I love them. Now, when we get further into the race with about 25 kilometers to go, it's Goujard that's the first rider to get dropped from B&B Hotels. And we all know why he's getting dropped because he's got 2 water bottles on his bike, right? Now, only 300 kilometers later, we're going to see the DSM rider, Romain, jet one of his bottles because he just realized he had 2 on there, and he saw Goujard back there getting dropped because he had 2. So you know these guys were listening to Adam Blythe throughout this stage, trying to keep the weight as low as possible. Now they'll go over the top of that climb and drop down and start going into the last main obstacle in today's stage, the last climb. Behind the group of field, it's been 3 teams basically chasing in the peloton. Frances de Jure, Trek Segafredo, and Archaic Samsic. But when we come down the descent before the final climb starts, it's Total Energies on the front, and they're destroying the field through all the curves as it's bombing down the descent at full gas. trying to lead into the climb and bring time back down on the breakaway up there. That's 4 guys left. Now the breakaway at 4 will start the last climb with only a 1-minute lead, and 2 of the riders will take off right from the bottom, leaving Luke Rowe on his own, who carried way too much water and food in his pocket, so we understand why he's getting dropped now. And the 2 riders going up front, Romain from DSM and De Beaumarchais, are on the move as they drop the 2 remaining breakaway companions, and they're heading up the road. Now behind, when the climb starts, it's very narrow and technical through this first part of the climb, and it's none other than Frances de Jure on the front trying to set a vicious tempo. Now here's the thing, when you're looking at a race like Provence, is that it's not filled with depth of riders. So here's when everybody was doing comments last night asking me whether or not if they thought Ganna could win big stage races, could he get through a climb like today's stage 3. This is the big thing about today's race. When you talk about the Tour de France and the teams are filled with so much depth, I remember racing back in the day, and you had CSC you're racing against, and it's Ivan Basso that's their highest GC rider, but it's Carlos Sastre that's there setting the pace on the climb. And before Carlos Sastre sets pace, it was the Schleck brothers up there that were blowing things up at the beginning of the climb, and with Fabien Cancellara just before that. So when you look at a race like this and you wonder whether or not if a rider like Filippo Ganna can win a stage like today, it's hard to predict that he would win when you have such quality riders like Nairo Quintana that can climb, Julian Alaphilippe, who's clearly on form, Pierre Latour's riding well. But then when you look at the depth of the field, you start to realize at the beginning of this climb that it's FDJ on the front, and they don't have anybody that's a pure climber. So every time when you look at the speeds with FDJ on the front, and you got to believe they're going as hard as they can, but when you look at that group, it's always a bit wide. It's not strung out, single file line. Now, can they ride a climb fast? Of course they can, but is it that crazy speed that you go into at the Tour de France where it's Fabien Cancellara just blowing the flat section all the way into 500 meters or 1K, 2K into the start of the climb, followed by the Schleck brothers, followed by Carlos Sastre, followed by Ivan Basso that's destroying everybody, trying to win the general classification at whatever race you might have been at. Now when you get here, remember, Nairo Quintana doesn't have a host of talented climbers there to blow this field up right from the bottom. When you look at Julian Alaphilippe, he doesn't have that. He got 2 guys missing from this race team out with COVID protocols. So when you're looking at the field and you're asking yourself, wow, it's so impressive, Ganna is still there. Of course he's going to be there. Everybody at this level of racing can climb when you're looking at who's on the front of the group right at this moment. So keep that in mind. FDJ is doing a great job, but it's always going to be 10, 20, 30 watts less pace at the beginning of the climb versus what you would see when we go into these next big races, starting with Paris-Nice, Tirreno Adriatico, and then when you get into the classics, they won't start the bottom of these climbs at the same kind of speed we're seeing here at today's stage 3. But the upside of that, it makes the racing real exciting because it slows the pace a little bit and it keeps it real competitive. Now, FDJ does a great job until Total Energies jumps on the front and they start picking the pace up a little bit more. But again, there's not a pure climber on Total Energies that can just string the field out and snap it. So we still see a good group of 20, 25 riders there, and all of the favorites on general classification. That is until Archaic Samsic get on the front. Now, Nairo Quintana, like I said, doesn't have a host of talented climbers on his team, so he knows the first 400 meters of his team pulling. It has to be all out and it has to be explosive. So the cameras missed the actual attack of Archaic Samsic as it was scanning back there and looking at Ganna and Julian Alaphilippe. But you know something's happening on the front because the field starts to stretch. When the camera veers back up to the front, you see it's Nairo Quintana and Archaic Samsic at the front driving as fast as they can until finally Nairo Quintana shoots out of a cannon and gets a gap on all the GC favorites here. Julian Alaphilippe makes his first mistake right here. He bridges across to Nairo Quintana. And let me point out, Julian Alaphilippe still had teammates left. At this point in time, we love this aggression from Julian Alaphilippe. So if you're going to live by the sword, you die by the sword. And that is Julian Alaphilippe's MO, right? He wants to be aggressive. He doesn't ever want someone else shining in the race over him. But at times, when you look at his tactics, okay, it's beautiful to watch. I don't even want to see it change, especially here on the butterfly effect, because it gives me something to talk about. But every time when he does these crazy tactics, you got to ask yourself, could you have won the general classification with just some steadier ride? Instead, he tries to blow up across to Nairo Quintana. He makes it. Then we see Nairo Quintana stretch the gap a little bit. Julian Alaphilippe comes back on. Now we see Julian Alaphilippe take a pull. He's riding in the front of Nairo Quintana, so we're starting to believe he's riding fantastic and maybe he has amazing form. But Nairo Quintana will light him up, get a gap of 15 seconds right away. Now we see Julian Alaphilippe looking back for Ivan Sosa, the Movistar rider, who's trying to bridge his way up to Nairo Quintana. He'll catch Julian Alaphilippe, and Alaphilippe will suffer on his wheel big time for the aggressive mistakes that he made ever since Archaic Samsic took off on the front and started to blow this race apart. With 2.5 kilometers to go, Julian Alaphilippe gets popped from Sosa, and now he's looking back at the group behind. He's got one teammate back there in the group chasing behind, Louis Van Varka, who's actually fighting for a top 10 general classification. And it's 3 Trek Segafredo riders back there that are setting the pace. Gabriel Zabier and Skilmos from Trek Segafredo are their high general classification guys, so Trek is setting a big pace. Along for company is the Movistar rider Matteo Jorgensen, who's having a fantastic week of racing. We saw him make the splits in the front group on the crosswind stage. Now he's climbing with the best general classification riders here, and he's able to get a free ride because Ivan Sosa is still up the road. Julian Alaphilippe suffering to hold on to the back as the Trek Segafredo riders are setting the pace. When they get under 1 kilometer to go, they start getting Ivan Sosa back in their sights. But up front, Nairo Quintana is blazing on the pedals, and he'll win today's stage 37 seconds over the second place rider as the Trek Segafredo train behind Skilmos and Matteo Jorgensen catch and pass Sosa just before the line for second and third on the stage. Julian Alaphilippe, who suffered miserably the last kilometer and a half, had his teammate Luis Vervaca drop him in the last 200 meters. Now this was crucial because the time gap between Skilmos and Julian Alaphilippe, we're only talking about 6-7 seconds between those two at the finish of today's stage. So Louis Vervaca, your job at that point in time was to make sure you stay with Julian Alaphilippe all the way to the line and pace him to the finish. Now Julian Alaphilippe suffers to the line, keeps his second place on general classification. No one could do anything about Nairo Quintana, who not only wins the stage, but takes the KOM points jersey too. He had a fantastic week of racing. He put all his crosswind skills to work on stage 1, day 2 of this week's racing in Provence, and then absolutely fabulous legs and his team perfection on their tactics of absolutely drilling it at the right moment for 400 meters only to launch Nairo Quintana to his win at this week's Provence. Now behind, fighting to come across the line a minute plus behind the winner Nairo Quintana is going to be Ganna, who put on a great display and went deep all the way to the line to keep a top 10 general classification, 7th overall when the race is finished on GC. But here's the thing, and I told you, Adam Blythe was going to bookend today's race from having some knucklehead tactics to now just being an absolutely ace, brilliant, eagle eye view of the race. With 70 kilometers to go, I believe, in the feed zone, it's Ganna back there changing bikes. He's getting off his disc bike and he's changing back to his rim brake bike. so that he can have a lighter bike for the final climb. I didn't spot this at all when I was sitting on the couch. Now in the morning, sometimes I'm up and moving around. I'm trying to watch most of the race or listening to it, but it's Adam Blythe with his eagle eye that catches the bike change. Not only does Adam Blythe catch the bike change, but he brings up that he's certain that, well, he believes he's pretty certain anyways, that it's against the rules and you could be disqualified for it. So Adam Blythe, absolutely spot on. Later, after the stage, they disqualified none other than world time trial champion, race leader here throughout this week, Filippo Ganna, for changing bikes at a point in time in the race when you weren't allowed to. You can go back and change with your team car, but you can't change during the race with a set position already pre-planned. And so Adam Blythe, you book in the race today. It was absolutely fantastic. You gave me a lot to talk about here on the butterfly effect, and your eagle eye to catch that when nobody else did was absolutely spot on and fantastic. Hope you guys enjoyed the butterfly effect. Hope you guys enjoyed Tour de la Provence here this week's of racing. There's lots more. The season has just begun. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'll see you guys real soon on the next edition of the Butterfly Effect.